Hi, welcome to the Scientist Sage Sangha. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And this is put on by Wise Heart Wellness, and we welcome you to watch live with us. If you want to find out information about doing that, you can send an email to scientistsage@gmail.com. Okay, we are going to start tonight, and we are talking about gladdening. And just in case people don't understand what I'm saying, it really is gladdening, like literally to make somebody glad, to create a particular state of being glad, an outlook of being glad, an orientation towards happiness. And that just is like being cheerful, being happy, a peacefulness sense to it. So it's a bigger word than any of the ones I've used to describe it. And the idea about gladdening is actually from Buddhist thought. In Buddhist practices, there's a lot of gladdening practices. And, we sort of wonder why that is, but it's because that we're not that way naturally. Most of us, that because gladdening is a thing, it's because we're generally not intending gladdening. We're running around, and most of us, go about our lives sort of doing the opposite. We're actually running around worrying a lot of the time, or, the surviving, just going along, not really enjoying each moment of the day. And so that, or worrying about something that hasn't happened yet, or worrying or being relieved that something we were worrying about didn't happen, but that's not still into gladdening. Okay. And so this really is this idea of getting out of what they call a limbic trance. And all that means is the emotional side of our brain. And it keeps us in this, oh no, what's going to happen? Will I get my way or not? And a lot of Western cultures are much more oriented to having some benchmarks of maybe success, or really it's like getting my way. Have I hit that mark? Am I getting my way? And so that is challenging. And we have to change our brain to make that happen. Often we're judging that life should be different, or that something is wrong. We don't know even what it is, but it might be that's not okay. And it may be as clear as going to a restaurant and, getting what you ordered and it's not how you want it. Or it might be as tenuous as, thinking, well, I have to graduate with this degree by this time, have 2.5 children by this time, find Mrs. or Mr. Right, and all of those kinds of things by certain deadlines. And otherwise something's wrong. And heaven forbid that we get some of those things and then we're happy, and then it changes. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, where does my happiness target go? What's going on? And so gladdening is really a change to that, taking us away from the lethargy or the judgmentalism of those kinds of thoughts, and stopping the resistance to life. Because lots of times we are trying to control life and organize it in certain ways so we're happier. Like me trying to get my puppy to sleep at exactly the right time for the right amount of time. Got to tell you, I did that with my children too, and it worked just as poorly. So there was not a gladdening. And actually, I did adjust with my children so that even when they woke when I thought they should be sleeping, that I would be glad to see them. I actually had to work consciously on that. So this idea, if we get attached to certain kinds of happiness, it doesn't mean that, when my puppy is sleeping, that I can't enjoy it. But if I get attached to it, so it doesn't, there's a word called pamoja in Pali, and it's happiness because of conditions, happiness for having fortuitous conditions going on. And it's okay, that's great. And if I can have it like this with this light hand, not grasping it, then I can really, that adds to my sukha, or that happiness without conditions, that naturally arising happiness. It actually helps me feel it more. But it's when I'm trying to hold on to it that I'm out of that natural happiness zone. I don't get to have that so much. And I don't get those overarching states of things like peace and kindness and connection because I'm still chasing and I'm still grasping. So, but this idea of wholesome pamoja or wholesome or conditioned happiness is there because we hold on lightly. So I really want to reinforce that it's not that we don't get to be happy about anything. There's just this flat emotion of acceptance of everything. It isn't. It really is. Gladdening is talking about opening up our capacity to be happy and to be happy in different situations. So those kinds of things, we want to talk first of all, just about holding the intention to uncover our natural capacity to be happy. And some people seem to just have that. Most people know somebody that just seems happy most of the time, regardless of what's going on in their life. And then we often know people on the other extreme, that people that are not happy no matter what is going on in their life. And so this is a continuum, okay? Nobody is just at one end all the time. But there's a capacity, just like our capacity to learn languages, to know how to dance, to know how to read different books. We can develop that capacity. We have a capacity to learn information. We have a capacity to learn emotions. Because part of this, I'll talk about this intention to gladden first, because the intention, if I think about that, it actually helps to rewire my brain. This is basic neuroplasticity. The things that I think about more get wired harder into my brain. And so just thinking about that can start to shift my brain. And the idea that I fire that new idea when I might be having a difficult moment, I fire this idea like, okay, I can create some space and peace, and there's something here to be happy with too. And so I know that I can do this. So we're going to talk into gladdening exercises that both open up the space for it. But I want to make one point before I go into the actual exercises. This is not to bypass things. Number one, not to bypass uncomfortable emotions, because that's not what we're doing. There's a book, decades ago called Dancing as Fast as I Can. And it really, really represented someone being so happy that they couldn't feel all those things that were harming them. And so this is not paying attention to those difficult emotions or difficult situations that are there, but creating that bigger space. And so that there is space for both the difficult and the joyous. Okay. So the things that we're going to talk about will also help us to move the things that might block our happiness from being there, that natural arising of happiness. The number one thing I start with, and it makes people flinch sometimes, so feel free to flinch if you want, is about prayer. And so this idea of prayer, but it's about asking in prayer or meditation or ritual or some continuous practice about being able to be endowed with that compass that turns you in the direction of that natural happiness. Okay. And having what are the thoughts for you, because it's different for different people and different for different situations and cultures. It's not the same across the board. There's some that are similar, but there's lots of things that are very personal. If someone has lots of noise sensitivities, going out to where there's loud music or lots of people, that would not create it for them, but for somebody else that would. So there's circumstances that are different between people. But just asking, what are the circumstances? What are the actions for you? What are the thoughts for you that increase your gladness and decrease whatever it is that is blocking it? Okay. So asking, and then concentration. Because if we're not paying attention, we're not that happy. I find that the deeper my presence is, the deeper my happiness is. As I was saying, I can't remember if I was saying it to this group, but I was driving along, and it's kind of snowy where I am, and the snow is kind of dirty, but it still sparkles in the sun. So there's all these beautiful sparkles too. And so looking at those kinds of things, if I just go, oh, my car's messy and the road's messy, the snow is even dirty, I don't see the sparkles. So those kinds of things, concentration, that real presence. And because when you start to concentrate, your brain actually calms down and opens up like a flower. Because when you're trying to multitask a bunch of different things, your brain is busy. It doesn't look for anything superfluous. And happiness is superfluous if you're driving your brain hard. Okay. And as you calm your brain down, there's fewer firings at the same time. You actually start to have that opening feeling. And your brain will start browsing for things you might like. Because when I calm my brain down, my brain knows that there's no imminent danger. And so it switches gears and starts to look for things that I might like. So that really, really helps, that concentration part. And it's a useful practice. Even simple things like jigsaw puzzles or crossword puzzles or sewing or any kind of crafting, those kinds of things help people focus, and they can be quite happy involved in it. Not in necessarily the outcome. They might like the outcome too, but the practice of doing something with concentration. Okay. Now, the next thing is about paying attention, and it's something that the Buddhist article had in it called Catch the Story. And this is so useful. I used to run mastery groups, and we would actually hold up signs that said story on them. When somebody was going off into a story of theirs, that was taking them away from their gladness. And it wasn't specifically for this group, but that's what happens. So if people are chronically unhappy, they can write down all the things that they say to themselves all the time. What are the stories that you're telling all the time? It might be something like, probably won't get a parking spot, and I'm going to be late, and the new boss isn't going to like me. And there can be stories like that. And they can be much more subtle stories, like, somebody's going to find out I'm not as good as they think I am. Subtle, different kinds of things as well. And you might notice they sneak in more when you're tired, more when you're overwhelmed, more when there's too much stimulation coming in. But literally writing out the stories can be useful because you can catch them and go, wait a minute, isn't there a different story I might weave through here as well? So catching that story like, oh, poor me, the dog hasn't slept in my house, it's messy, and, I haven't got groceries. And I'm like, oh, but I'll tell you a cure for that a little further on. So stay with us. So that idea of that presence that you're talking about in the beginning, this radical presence as opposed to automatic evaluation. So that automatic evaluation literally can be going on in the background, like we were just talking about. Like, how do I fit in? Do I fit in with these people? Do they like me? Am I as good at this as they are? What I'm wearing, is it appropriate? It could be that kind of stuff in the background. But it can also just be chatter in the background. And radical presence brings you there, and you are really there and available. I find this in social things. If I manage to allow myself to connect with people, I have wonderful experiences. So literally breathing yourself into it and just being present with what is going on in front of you. Then acting as if, a friend of mine reminded me about this one today. Okay, it was on my phone. I hadn't looked at it yet, but that acting as if, and again, this is not about pretending something difficult isn't happening, but what if I act as if something good might happen next? What if I act as if that whatever my brain is telling me is a catastrophe isn't a catastrophe? That acting as if, what if I acted as if I fit in this group of people? all sorts of possibilities for that. What if I act as if this won't be difficult? What if I act as if this sadness that I've had is going to move through me and there will be more space for gladness again? So with emotions, with circumstances, with counteracting thoughts in our head, that act as if can be really beautiful way to break that up and move us back into a gladdening area. And then finding the good in this particular moment. I was like in this moment, I can see the big black cat on someone's bed. And it's like, that makes my body be really happy. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I'm gladdened right here, right now. And so it can be as simple as that. I have a few attention issues. So when I have to sit somewhere too long, it's uncomfortable for me. And so I have to start looking around and taking in what makes me feel glad to be there so that I can pay attention longer. Because otherwise I start to get grumpy and restless and uncomfortable. And I notice that coming up and go, okay, let me find the good in this moment. So literally shopping in that moment, and it might be a small circle that you get to work in, or it might be a really big one. Maybe you're going to think about a nice discussion you had with someone earlier in the day, or remember how warm it was in Hawaii when you were there, or just bringing those things to mind gladdens the situation you're in as well. So it's very portable. It doesn't have to be one time, one place. And then literally numbering, like counting things works. So taking 10 breaths to enjoy the goodness of something that's there. And so I often, if I'm walking along and my head starts going to places that aren't gladdening, I will stop and take 10 breaths of outside air. It's like, oh, this is so great to be outside here right now. And I can just go one breath and race back on, but my mind snaps back. Because remember, we're trying to rewire our brains. And that's why using a absolutely arbitrary number, it could be 4, it could be 10, but counting. Okay, I'm going to count myself out of this non-glad feeling. It helps to do those kinds of things. And if you happen to read the email that was advising people about this Sangha, there's a thing called Gatha verses. And Gatha verses are little short verses that people recite to make them, make the situation more gladdening. Okay. And so the one I'm going to give you an example is from the email, and it says, waking up, I smile. 24 brand new hours are before me. I vow to live fully in each moment and look at all beings with the eyes of compassion. And that's just a little gatha. Other people might be just commentating what they're doing. Like walking in the winter snow. I can feel my feet crunching the ice. I can feel the frost on my face. So these little gathas are just about bringing us present. And when we get present, we appreciate. And you can make up your own little gathas. I know lots of people that have very humorous ones. And they will say things like, waking up because the dog is barking. Remembering I have the privilege of a pet. So they work with circumstances that might not be gladdening to bring their brains around and train their brains not to go down those other paths. So these little gathas are ancient practices, but people use them right up to this current day in new ways. And there are actually some that play on YouTube that you can play in the background. If you don't have the wherewithal to generate them yourself, you can play them in the background, whatever you're doing. And those are, they're sort of this neutral tool, but when they open you up and soften you up, your heart is softer and more open to that presence of gladness, okay? And then loving kindness. And this is a Buddhist practice as well. And it's usually, it does, they don't, there's no way, there's no Buddhist police that are going to come and tell you to do it different, okay? So there's usually 4 sentences, and the 4 sentences that I used, may I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be blessed. May I live well. And then you take it to other people. And so there is a person that they describe as a dear one. So a dear one is somebody that you have no friction with, that you adore openly, there's no problem. I have a friend, Marilyn, that I've been saying my second verse for over a decade. And so when I see her, I'm really fond of her. She doesn't know I'm doing that. Which actually she has known over different years that I'm doing it. But I feel happy. And then you do it for sort of a stranger or an acquaintance that you don't have any problems with as well. And you're just wishing, and it's sort of being of service to somebody, and it'll make you feel good. And then you do it with a difficult person. And this is taking away something that might block your gladdening. So you might say it for someone in your life that you have trouble with, a boss, a partner, a kid, a pet, whatever, but you say the same things. May so-and-so be happy. May so-and-so be peaceful. May so-and-so be blessed. And it softens up that difficulty with the other person. So you're not holding it in your body any longer. So this loving kindness practice, like I say, there are many, many variations of it, but it can really simple little tool that you can say when you're walking or sitting or driving that gladdens your heart. And it actually freed me from being a hostage of my victimhood and my hopelessness. I was struggling with a lot of depression, and my mind kept repeating sentences like the stories we talked about earlier, and I couldn't shake them. But I just kept doing this, and then I liked doing it. And then it organized my brain and calmed me down and stopped all the chatter in there. And so it became something that made me happier and happier and happier. And so it's a small little multi-purpose tool that's really, really helpful with this. Okay, let me check my time. Okay, I'm going to do the last big good one. The others, if you want a few more, they're still in the email. But gratitude is the one. If there's a quote from the email that says, if you think happiness makes you grateful, think again. It's gratefulness that makes you happy. And I am a gold medal gratitudist, because I repeat and review long gratitude things. A client of mine came and said, she does the ABCs, 26 gratitudes every morning before she gets out of bed. And I'm like, well, I can't let her do it more than I do. So I had to be competitive. So gratitude practices, no matter what, work. And these things really make a big difference in your body. They turn on different chemicals in your body that allow you to let more happiness in. And you can start with saying them in ways that you're not even that invested in, and it still works, because your brain differentiates these things. And there's just so much research on this, ancient technique of gratitude. The last thing I'm going to share with you before we break off to do a little contemplation is that there is a researcher that was researching this idea. And he had his 87-year-old mother, who had been kind of a sourpuss her whole life, and she was getting worse as she got older. And she thought this was kind of a stupid idea, and he wasn't sure it'd work either. But she sent him a poem 3 years later when she was 90. And this is the poem. I'm happier than I have ever been, and truly mean each word. The thoughts that cause the worries now all seem so absurd. Though my eyesight has been dimmed, I see clearer than before. The glass is not half empty. It is overflowing, to be sure. And so you can teach old dogs new tricks. No matter how jaded you might feel, you can literally learn new tricks. And the trick that he taught her was to say whatever her complaint was, because that was her biggest strength. And so she would say, the coffee's no good. And then she would add, and my life is blessed. So whatever it was, my daughter didn't visit me for my birthday, and my life is blessed. That's what turned the corner for this 87-year-old woman. So, okay, I hope you got some ideas about gladdening tonight. And what I'm going to invite you to do is just, how would it feel if your brain, somebody came in and tidied it up and swept out the things that got in the way and left space for that glad response? What would that be like? What would you think? What would you say? What would you do? Just open up to this idea of what would it be like if my brain was suddenly wired for ease and happiness, that was the compass that I had. Okay. So just sit still, take a couple of breaths. And just imagine if you could feel that openness flow into your body. If you could really take in gratitude as a biological experience in your body, not just on your face, but through your chest, right down through your stomach. You might literally feel your body and your brain being gladdened right now. You might feel those thoughts that fight it coming in the background. Just let them fall away, like somebody's cleaning them up from the floor for you. And enjoy this little space where your brain has been decluttered of those difficult thoughts, those chronic sort of nagging things. And for the people that are with me, feel free to continue doing that till we close this. Well, you can continue it for the rest of your life if you want to. And for the people that are seeing this later, I hope you found something interesting and useful for you. And please leave a comment below. And again, if you would like to be in touch with us, you can email scientistsage@gmail.com to get information about this Sangha or to make suggestions. Thank you for joining us. I am with you. You are with me. Blessed be. Good night.